incoming vessel. Identify yourself. Jumpship Lancaster, out Endurian. Lancaster, state your business. Escort control. Those are Endurian military troop ships then. That's a Raj control. Time to strike while we're weak, eh? I'm scrambling fighters now. Negative control. We're escorting Capellan's home. Nice story, Lancaster. We've had a lot of lies through here. Sion control. This is Magistrix Naomi Central Lao. New contact is net. Say again? The Enduring Jumpship is escorting my dropship and is under the Magistrate's protection. Control. Stand down the fighters and stand by to receive a download for retransmission to the Forbidden City. Authorization is Chrysanthemum Omega 17. Authenticating. That's the chance. Roger that, my lady. Lancaster and accompanying vessels are welcome to Sion space. And may I add, my lady, welcome home.
Once again, the communications blackout surrounding the Capellan Confederation prevented developments from being reported to the rest of human space. However, the events that did break through the blackout brought grim news. The Magistracy of Canopus played a central role in the Capellan sphere during the early 3076. In February, Magistrix Naomi Central Lao narrowly avoided a Blake's trap. While returning to Sion, her jumpship encountered what appeared to be a Capellan vessel in the Furut system. Unbeknownst to her, it was actually a Blake's force intent on capturing or eliminating her. Before the Blake's could spring their trap, however, a fleet from the Duchy of Endurian arrived and crippled the disguised ship. Duchess Humphreys personally boarded the Magistrix's vessel and explained the situation. Endurian intelligence had intercepted reports of the false ship earlier and knew it was a Blake's operation. The Duchy initially chose not to intervene, as the vessel appeared to be heading nowhere of strategic importance. That changed when Endurian discovered that the ship was bound for the same system as Naomi. In saving the Magistrix, Humphrey scored a point against the thinly veiled threat Naomi had made during a visit in the previous year. At the same time, it provided an opportunity to extend a gesture of goodwill toward the Capellan-Canopian alliance, reinforcing the relationship on equal terms rather than from the position of a lesser state. Afterwards, Duchess Humphreys personally escorted Naomi for the rest of her journey to Sion. Later in April, 2 battalions of the 1st Canopian Light Horse struck the independent world of Astrocracy. The Magistracy Armed Forces believed the planet served as a Blake's staging ground for attacks against the Magistracy, the Marian Hegemony, and nearby League systems. The Light Horse quickly assaulted 3 bases with minimal losses before advancing to the local Sultanate of Surin Obaka Rashir. The Sultanate was controlled by the Blake's aligned Order of the Faithful Pirate Band and possessed superior numbers to the attacking Canopian force. The battle reached a stalemate until the local population revolted against the pirates. The uprising shattered the Faithful's battle line, which rapidly collapsed into a full rout. Magistracy forces remained on the planet for another week before departing and leaving its inhabitants to reclaim the world for themselves. At around this time, Devlin Stone approached both the Chancellor and the Magistrix to discuss the possibility of their states joining his unified alliance. However, both leaders declined the offer, preferring to wage the war on their own terms. Nevertheless, they assured Stone that they would not interfere with coalition operations, so as long as they assisted in the liberation of Capellan worlds. The Capellan Confederation returned to prominence toward the end of the year. Between September 7th and September 21st, the worlds of Styx, Tsisang, Wei, St. Andre, and Hunan were hit by a series of Word of Blade attacks. These strikes were widely viewed as retaliation for the removal of Blake's forces from those worlds. Blake's Level 3 formations, or battalions, infiltrated the targeted planets aboard falsified jumpships and dropships, carrying tactical nuclear weapons. Once in position, the attackers detonated the devices amid populations still struggling to rebuild. A Federated Suns commentator describes Capellan doctrine as like begets like. and the Confederation's response reflected that philosophy. Following the nuclear attacks, the CCAF retaliated with a combination of nuclear and biological weapons against Blake's positions, producing an estimated casualty rate of at least 40%. These extreme measures proved highly effective in eliminating Blake's forces. One Sang Shao, or colonel, even recommended that such weapons become the standard response to future raids. However, the use of such weapons carried immense risks and costs. On stick, a neurotoxin was deployed against a Blake's-held drop port. While the toxin successfully neutralized its intended targets, it also drifted into a nearby civilian population center, causing numerous civilian deaths. This, however, did not stop the CCAF from continuing such tactics, all in the name of defeating the word of Blake. Even pro-Capellan partisan groups began adopting similar methods in their fight against the jihadists. A pro-Capellan organization known as the Black Band detonated a dirty bomb during a Blake's parade on Arboris. Hundreds were killed or wounded, including several prominent Blake's figures. Following the attack, the group demanded that control of the world be transferred to the Confederation within 24 hours. When the deadline passed without a response, the Black Band carried out a second bombing, this time targeting a crowded shopping district during peak business hours. The explosion killed thousands, including 50 children.
Citizens of the Confederation, I address you this evening both as your Chancellor and as a proud citizen and son of Capella. I wish to share with you how proud I am of the heroic sacrifices you have all made in the spirit of Sing Sheng. Our people have come together in these our darkest hours as never before, putting aside petty differences and squabbles for the good of the Confederation at a time where other realms fall as wheat under a scythe. It is because of this strength and unity that the Confederation has stood against those who oppose us. As many of you know, we are beset by enemies on many fronts. At this very hour, the brave men and women of the Confederation's armed forces battle heroically on many worlds, opposing the despotic armies of the Word of Blake and the misbegotten money soldiers. Against these tremendous but not impossible odds, we have liberated many worlds, previously lost to us in body, if not spirit. However, once again, we, the Capellan people, find ourselves alone. Victor Davion and his puppet ally, Devlin Stone, continue to deny us any assistance in retaking imperiled worlds like Hellraven 5, Arboris, or Genoa from the common threat. Stone's forces have attacked loyal Capellan troops on Nanking and Tigris as our brave soldiers fought to liberate their fellow citizens from the chains of their Blake's oppressors. This will not stand. We will liberate our brothers and sisters who have lived so long under the iron heel of enemy oppression. We do not need the help of this upstart Stone or his self-appointed coalition. We are the Capellan people. We can accomplish any goal. Through unity and strength of purpose, we have overcome every obstacle set before us. Together, we will forge our destiny. Sing Sheng!
3077 marked the year in which the jihad began to crumble. The Innisphere was now largely united under a single coalition. The combined weight of the major and minor powers working together was more than the Blakists could sustain. Although the Confederation and the Magistracy did not join the alliance, both continued to achieve major victories within their sphere of operations. By the end of February, Arboris, Algot, Hellraven 5, Genoa, and New Aragon had finally been liberated after years of occupation. Local populations celebrated these victories with great enthusiasm. Former citizens had their citizenship reinstated, while non-citizens were granted the opportunity to obtain Capellan citizenship if they could demonstrate their efforts in resisting the word of Blake. These victories were hard-fought, but some worlds quickly became battlegrounds once again, or saw their liberations reversed. While the Coalition and the Capellan sphere had agreed to avoid interfering with one another, The liberation of Algot nearly sparked a confrontation. Shortly after the world was secured, a massive Davion fleet reportedly translated into the system. According to reports, the orbiting Capellan Navy intercepted the fleet and compelled it to withdraw. The liberation of Helleran V proved especially costly. During the drop pod phase of the invasion, the Feng Huang-class ship, Franco Martel, was destroyed by a concealed orbital defense network consisting of 2 Drake SDS control stations, 24 cockatrice monitors, and 12 squadrons of Hive-class fighters. Witnesses reported that the vessel's central spine snapped in two before ground-to-space missiles delivered the final blows. Despite the loss, the landing force of the 5th Macaron's Armored Cavalry, Lockhart's Ironsides, and Laurel's Legion successfully reached the surface and liberated the planet. But their victory proved temporary. In April, the Blake's 48th Division counterattacked and drove the Capellan forces from the world. Fortunately, not every liberation was reversed. Pleione was liberated on May 23rd after a campaign that had lasted since the opening stages of the jihad and costed countless lives. Following the world's liberation, the local population publicly executed Joseph Larsus, the Blake's appointed leader. The last Blake's holdouts were finally eliminated sometime by June the following year. Later in August, the CCAF retook Ningpo after a devastating battle. During the fighting outside the capital, the Word of Blake's 13th Division employed nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. Warrior House Masukai responded in kind. The resulting nuclear exchange obliterated the capital city, where the bulk of the fighting was concentrated. In the final stages of the battle, Warrior House Masukai launched a suicidal assault against Blake's positions, forcing the 13th Division to begin withdrawing. Warrior House Ijori soon arrived to secure what remained of the battlefield, but suffered a final attack from the retreating Blake's. Nankin proved to be a far more complicated affair. Coalition and Capellan forces arrived in the system at roughly the same time, and from that point onward, 2 competing accounts emerged. The first claims that Warrior House Fujita immediately accelerated toward the planet at a sustained burn of at least 2 Gs. The maneuver exhausted its personnel and reportedly caused additional casualties before planetfall. Once on the ground, the Warrior House was easily repelled by the defending militia. Coalition forces then arrived, destroyed the Blake's defenders, and secured the world. House Fujita subsequently demanded the coalition forces to withdraw from the planet. The request was refused due to the continued presence of Blake's holdouts. In response, House Fujita allegedly launched a nuclear strike against the coalition base camp, forcing coalition forces to evacuate. The second version of events presents a very different picture. According to this account, coalition forces abandoned the Warrior House during a battle and then attempted to claim the planet for themselves afterward. Supporters of this interpretation argued that similar incidents had already occurred on several Capellan worlds, where coalition commanders allegedly promised to return liberated planets before asserting control over them. Under this version of events, Warrior House Fujita acted to defend sovereign Capellan territory. Regardless of which account is true, Nankin ultimately remained under Capellan control. The year continued with the liberation of Zurich. Although the Capellan banner once again flew over the world, Blake's holdouts continued to plague the planet. In one instant, Blake's sympathizers seized control of a courthouse and massacred hundreds of people. In another, a Blake's battlemech launched an attack against the local CCAF garrison. Even so, the Word of Blake was steadily being driven toward defeat. 3078 marked the end of the Capellan Confederation's role in the jihad. By the end of the year, most of the territory for which the Capellans had fought and bled was finally back within the Confederation's fold. Yet there was little cause for celebration. Devlin Stones' coalition appeared to be a new storm on the horizon, poised to engulf Capellan skies. The first half of the year was marked by both the liberation of worlds such as Liberty and the emergence of new hostilities. In January, the 4th Big Mac and the 4th Tau Saudi Rangers were engaged in a campaign to retake Heshen from the Blake's. During the battle, however, the Marek 12th Atreus Dragoons, operating as part of the coalition, made planetfall and began attacking both the Word of Blake and the CCAF. The Battle of Ashen quickly became a three-sided conflict. The fighting continued into February, when Coalition and CCAF forces temporarily joined together to eliminate the remaining Blakist resistance. That cooperation lasted only a week. Capellan commanders were determined to eradicate every remaining Blakist without mercy, while Coalition forces intervened to prevent what they viewed as a massacre. The fragile alliance collapsed, and hostilities resumed between the former partners. After having fighting, however, CCAF forces were compelled to withdraw, leaving the Coalition to raise its banner over the planet. Coalition influence was also beginning to seep into the Capellan zeitgeist. On worlds such as Genoa, large demonstrations, primarily organized by university students, called upon the government to adopt the principles of the Kittery Manifesto. The document denounced existing political systems and advocated the creation of a new order through the rejection of established traditions and institutions. The authorities responded by arresting the protesters en masse and dispersing the movement. By this stage, the Capellan Confederation was largely, if not entirely, removed from the wider conflict. At most, it would be required to root out isolated pockets of Word of Blake resistance on a handful of worlds. The Confederation's attention was now shifting toward what many perceived as a new threat. Historically, Capellan worlds liberated by the Coalition had been expected to return to Confederation control once the Blakist threat was eliminated. Yet, no such transfer occurred. Chancellor Sun Tzu Lao reportedly offered to support the Coalition's assault on Terra in exchange for the returns of those worlds, but his proposal was firmly rejected. To many Capellans, Devlin Stone was little more than a puppet of the Federated Suns, and the Coalition itself was viewed as a scheme to seize Capellan territory under the guise of liberation. With much of human space rallying behind Stone's alliance, the Confederation found itself unable to prevent the steady absorption of worlds within the Tikhonov commonality into the Coalition's sphere of influence. As the Jihad finally drew to a close with the Battle of Terra, the Capellan Confederation turned its attention to the uncertain future ahead.